mute. Anyone who's this 1+7 Pro, I will request to mute your, session screen.
Yeah, I'm controlling. No worries, no worries. Carry on, ma'am.
Okay, great.
No worries.
So, because we're talking about muting, I don't think we are a very big group. I'm pretty sure more people will join in at the moment. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm okay with you being on mute at the moment, because it just becomes easier for everyone to listen to and communicate. However, because this is such an interesting subject, it is absolutely okay if you have any questions, you can share it in the chat box. Because mostly what I've seen is, when we are discussing something, questions will come up and later we tend to forget it. So I'm absolutely okay. You can stop me at any time, post it on the chat box, and I will take your questions then and there. And even after we are done with the webinar, I will be around for a while for if there's any other additional questions that come up, please feel free to bring it up there. So I'm going to minimize this. And first and foremost, thank you so much for having me here today. It's actually a complete pleasure. And it feels so nice to be back, with professionals from the corporate world. So what you see here is me today, but this wasn't me a few years back. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how this happened. And so I studied economics. I'm an MBA, and I worked in the corporate sector for 15 years. And I worked very happily. So I probably was blessed with, good companies, good bosses, good teams that I worked with, and life was good. So when I look back, I call that my first innings. And in that first innings, things were pretty good till I had my twins 7 years back. And I had planned for it, trust me, like the way we plan at office and how we work. So I had planned everything, but that phase of my life completely threw me a little out of gear, because I realized no matter how much we kind of prepare, when children arrive, it's a completely different world. And I still continued. I got back to work after my maternity break, and because I truly loved what I was doing. I love interacting with people. I was in HR and later in general management. And as I said, I worked in one of the aviation companies here in Dubai for 9 years, and that's the only company I worked in since I came to Dubai. And then when my children were like around 2 years, 18 months, 2 years old, I realized that my daughter had severe motion sickness, which is something I have struggled with personally throughout my life. I could manage it, I could camouflage it, but when I was staring at my daughter, now my son had started to go to play school, and my daughter wouldn't get into the car. And medicines wouldn't help because there was nothing wrong physically with either of us. But both of us, I could camouflage and manage it. She couldn't at that little age. This drove me to understanding and finding a solution. And partly you can call it a mother's guilt also, to figure out, because I felt responsible. I feel it, my daughter feels it, so I need to find a solution. And that drove me to research more about the mind, to research more about the intangible aspects of life. And it brought me to a place called Illuminations. I work now at Illuminations in JLT. And I went there as a client to check if there is any other way on earth that could help me solve my issues and my daughter's. Being in the corporate sector, being trained and worked, I believe I was extremely left-brained. So for me, it was very important to understand the science behind whatever I was doing. And hypnotherapy was the first thing that resonated with me, because I found answers. I found things that made sense. It was a science that I wanted to experience. I didn't believe in it, to be very honest. I said I will go for it, and if it works, good. If it doesn't work, I have nothing to lose. And lo and behold, it just didn't work for me. But when I worked on myself, it worked on my daughter, and I didn't have to do any other intervention on her. And slowly things started to change. I was completely baffled at that time. And I'm like, okay. I went back to Illuminations and I said, I met my therapist and I said, you know what? thank you so much for guiding me through this process, but now I want to learn. And even at that point, I did not plan to be a therapist or change my careers. And that began my learning journey first. So first I started to study. I studied clinical hypnotherapy, went on to do family constellation. As you see, there are big words, but more or less what I'm trying to say is I got intrigued with the science of the mind. And then as luck would have it, I transitioned. It took me 2 years because I really loved my corporate job as well. I was blessed to have good people working with me. It took me 2 years to transition from there into the world of wellness. And this is what I call as my second innings of my career. So coming to today's topic, it's quite a big one, isn't it? It says holistic approach to cultivating emotional resilience as we combat the ongoing pandemic. Of course, we will look at the topic from the point of view of COVID and what's happening around us. But what I wish to bring to you today are tools and techniques that you can use even beyond COVID, because COVID is going to end, things will change over a period of time. But knowing the science of the mind, looking at ourselves as holistic beings, just not having a physical body, this you can even, I believe you will be able to take it even forward beyond COVID. Now I will just break down the topic into the key words that we have today, and I would like the session to be as interactive as possible. So because it will help all of us, not only me, but all the rest of you who are here today, to express and find out what these things mean for us. Because whatever we are going to talk about today is not rocket science, is not something that is new. Yet it means very different things to different people. And because it means different things to each one of us, I'm going to just give it a framework of what, for example, the word emotion means to us today, or what framework we are going to look at it as. So we are going to look at emotion as we are defining it for today's webinar as a strong feeling that comes out of my own circumstances, my moods, my relationship with others. Now, what is most important is it is very subjective. So hence we are not going to try to box it, because for example, I am feeling happy. Now my happiness will be very different from your understanding of happiness or your feeling of happiness. So we are looking at emotions precisely today, but we will just not dive into emotions and just talk about them from a distant point of view. We are going to understand it holistically. Before that, let's look at what is resilience. Why have we picked up these two words, emotional resilience? And as we all know, resilience is the ability to recover, like it's the bounce back. So if, for example, if COVID has hit the world, how resilient we are is shown in how we are going to cope and how we are going to bounce back. Now, whatever I've told you till now, none of it is rocket science and nothing is new. We already know it. We know that we have emotions, we have feelings, and that in terms of when we are faced with a crisis, we have the resilience in us. Each one of us have it. It's inbuilt in us, because survival is inbuilt and so is resilience. So that brings us to the main question for today's topic, that being, then what do you think keeps you and me away from being that emotionally resistant, that strong person, that Zen personality? So please share, please tell me, what do you think is the thing that takes us away from being resilient? Yes, Sherry, if you want the PPT, I'm more than glad to share it. I'll send it later, not a problem at all. So when we know what is resilience, what takes us away? It is fear, Krish, yes, correct. Especially so in terms of COVID, when this is something unknown. This is not something we were prepped up for, not even us, not our parents, not probably our grandparents. So it's not that something we have known. So it's a fear of a crisis that we have not faced before. Thank you, Krish. Uncertainty and not ready for it. Yes, exactly. Unexpected multiple events become overwhelming. Yes, the domino effect. So if there is one thing, we can deal with it. And if you just look at this year, it's been one after the other, starting from maybe end of last year, the fires, bushfires in Australia, going into COVID, all the storms that have rocked India, the wave of racial discrimination going on in America and the impact of that. So it's been rocky. So yes, unexpected. All of these events have been unexpected, and yet, and they're overwhelming. So you're right, and thank you all for sharing it. What I call this, and what we're going to use the term today is, just one moment. I think there's one more comment. Yes, there is unending. Thank you for adding Pushpendra to it. So what we are talking about is, now look at what you've responded to. These are factors that are internal as well as external. So your oil crisis, financial issues, job loss is all external that is happening around me. And we are also talking of our own fears, that is internal. But either ways, this is what we are calling as triggers. So what takes us away from being that Zen, emotionally resistant, strong person is triggers. Now, these triggers can be either external, which is huge at the moment, or it could be completely internal. What we focus on today is not the external, and the reason behind it is we actually have no control. If you think about it, it's a little pessimistic, but it's very realistic to say that even if it is COVID or it's a job loss or it's the financial crisis, the fact remains that we as individuals have zero control over it. So we can be sad, unhappy, anxious, depressed about it, but the fact remains we cannot change it. Globally, at a very collective level, probably yes, but at individual level, no. That pushes us to think what we can control and what we can work on, which is only one thing, our own selves. So moving from being from a state of getting triggered and getting this overwhelming reaction emotionally, we will look today at how do I work on my own self so that COVID may take 1.5 years more, 6 months more for the vaccines to come. There may be 3 other incidents that can happen globally that can affect, but how do I stay resilient? How do I navigate through this time, irrespective of my triggers? So, in the world of holistic sciences, we say that a trigger is an experience that draws us back into the past and causes old feelings and behaviors to arise. Now, take a moment and think of whatever is triggering you during this experience, last few months and going forward. And for example, if that is fear, I'm pretty sure this is not the first time that you have experienced it. It cannot be. What we feel today must have been experienced before. It is not new. It is not that I did not know fear, but because of COVID, it's a new emotion that has come up. Very, very unlikely, unless we are literally children and we are learning the different emotions that our mind plays. So with that background, I will just give you certain examples. This is not a complete list, but this just gives you a sneak peek into what are the things that trigger us. These are things that can trigger you at work. These are things that can trigger you at home. And if you look at this list, someone else controlling your time, being asked to do something you don't like. For example, wearing a mask. We don't have an option. We are in the situation and part of our mind also knows that's the best for us, but it triggers us. We complain, we whine. Taking orders from authority figures. There are so many rules around at the moment and which are all good for our own well-being. Or we feel there is not enough love, there is not enough acceptance, people don't respect us, any of this. This is not COVID centric, but if you look at the COVID situation, you'll see each one of them and many more as a result it's not that the triggers are new for us. If you take a moment, if you step back, you'll notice that there will be a pattern and a theme to my own personal triggers. Now, what COVID has done is just, it has heightened it. So if I am a person who gets triggered when my mobility is blocked, or when I have less space for my creativity. The lockdown makes it worse because now I cannot go out by law. Or if I'm someone that has issue with somebody else giving me instructions, this is a time when authorities are in full-fledged for our own good. So look at it from the COVID perspective, but you will pick up a few of these to know that this is not just COVID. It's just heightened. COVID has just heightened and made us more sensitive to our emotional triggers. Now there are multiple triggers. There is not one trigger, and if we just sit down and start to look at what is triggering me, we will write down 1,000 things today. The idea is not to do that because it becomes mind-boggling and we will get lost in it. So for today's webinar, I thought I will help you to categorize your triggers, your mental, emotional triggers in a way that will become very easy for you to look into it and to heal it. And the best way of doing it is to put it in some kind of a framework. I would urge you to try this with me as I take you through the webinar. If you can, please do it on a piece of paper, pen and paper. I'm old school because pen and paper, and when we write, we are activating and accessing our subconscious, which is where this all comes from. I'm going to come to that. Or you may just make note of the exercises and later you can do it for yourself. If you find it useful, you can share it with your friends, your colleagues, your family. So, as I said, there are so many things in our environment today that can trigger us, and we just about cannot focus on each one of them. So a very beautiful way of looking at triggers is looking at where do they come from. Now, if you look at this group today that we are here, we are all adults. We have certain roles that we play in our families, in our offices, in our society. Now, if we are adults, which means adult is just a state of mind. If we are truly our age, so for example, today I'm 40 years old. Who is 40? Which part of Arpita is 40? It is actually my physical body. It's not my mind. If my mind aligns to the resources and to the experiences of a 40-year-old adult, I can pretty well guarantee that things may happen around me, but I will not get triggered. Because in the present moment, if we are present as adult individuals, we have enough resources in us to deal with the crisis. The problem comes when my body still remains my present day adult age, but my mind goes somewhere else. And there are only two very simple places where my mind goes. It can either go to my past, or it will either try to peek into my future. There are three triggers that come from our past, and there is one that we'll deal with today that comes from future. So we are now trying to structure it in a way that you can take it forward with your notes, and we will do it as an exercise. So the first trigger that comes from the past is when we feel, I have done something wrong. So something happens at work, something happens at home, and you suddenly feel responsible for it. So please tell me, please share in your chat boxes, what is that emotional trigger? What is that feeling that actually tosses you off your resilience when you have a very strong feeling of, I did something wrong? What do we feel? Thank you, Pushpendra. Guilt. Yes, remorse, guilt, blame, we can call it. But what I'm looking for is the word guilt. Regret. Yes, fear or consequence comes later. I'm talking of immediately, what do I feel? Immediately, I feel regret. I was supposed to go and see my parents back in India in January. For some reason, for work reason, I couldn't go. And then COVID has happened. And now I cannot go. Neither can my parents come and visit me. So the first, even before getting into fear, consequence, or overthinking, what I feel is guilt. So this is your first trigger, guilt. Now, second trigger. I did not do anything wrong. Somebody else did something wrong. What happened, Simran? What is oh no? Is that a response to guilt?
Yeah, that's my first, word. So I say, oh no, that's it.
Yes, it
Of
is.
course,
And
regret, but oh no is the word.
oh no. Oh no is the regret. Oh no is the guilt. Like, oh no, only if I knew COVID was happening, I would have planned my life in a different way. But the fact
Exactly.
remains, none of us knew it.
Very true.
Okay, so one is guilt. What could be the emotion that you feel that triggers you out of your resilience when you have not done anything wrong, but someone else has done something wrong? Revenge? Yes, Sajin, revenge, blame. Go before that. What do you feel? What is the first thing you feel before you want to take revenge and kill someone? Anger. Thank you, Simran. Yes, it is anger. The first thing we feel when someone else has done something wrong is anger. And that brings us to the third and the last trigger that comes from the past. Now, I did not do anything wrong. You did not do anything wrong, but the situation is wrong. BP shoots up. Yes, BP shoots up in anger, definitely. Yes, Krish, bad luck. Correct, bad luck. Like, for example, COVID. We can't go about blaming anyone, not ourselves. It's bad luck that we are facing it. What does this make you feel? Get in touch with your feelings, like guilt. Now, you won't feel guilt for COVID. You won't feel anger unless you're really blaming someone. It's my destiny. Yes. Yeah, it also happens. Forget COVID. For people, for example, if a child has been brought up in a war zone, there is nothing that the child could do. Frustration, yes. The word I'm looking for, you all are very right, but the word I'm looking for is helplessness. It makes us feel completely helpless, completely out of control, and no matter how intelligent and how hardworking and how successful we are, but we are pushed into such a circumstance. So these are your only three triggers that will break your resilience, that will overwhelm you, that comes from the past. There is only one that comes from our thoughts of future. And that means, for example, everything is fine now, life is going good, but I'm constantly worrying. Somebody said overthinking here as well. I'm constantly worrying, what if something goes wrong in the future? And what is it that we feel when we are worrying about something going wrong in the future? Give me your words, give me emotions. Anxiety, yes, anxiety. Fear. It is fear that then gives rise to stress, and continued stress then gives rise to anxiety. Yes, uncertainty causes that fear, and this is a cycle, and that is where we are stuck. Okay, so this is the perspective we are going to take today. Chunk down our triggers, because each one of you will have different zones. Some of you or most of you will have a mix of a lot of stuff, like I feel guilt and I feel helpless and I feel anger at the same time. It is okay. We are human beings. We are not robots, and we are allowed to feel whatever we feel. So that's not a problem. What we want to move on to next is, if you have a pen and paper with you, make your own notes. And probably for today's exercise, just pick one which is mostly affecting you emotionally, what is pushing you out of your zone of resilience, which is overwhelming you. Today you can work on one, and you can repeat the exercise for yourself as you go forward. It's very these are all mind science exercises. They are very safe, and you can repeat it. So just take a few seconds, take a minute or so, and make notes, handwritten notes, I insist, because it starts to exercise your subconscious, and figure out which one of this resonates with you, which one of this makes you feel a little uncomfortable. That is the one you go for today. So now that I understand that there are 4 major categories which will push me out of my emotional intelligence, my emotional resilience. Now tell me, even knowing that tomorrow morning, we will still get triggered by our own patterns. So share with me, let me know your thoughts that even cognitively knowing this is not a solution. Then why do we get triggered? Knowing everything, knowing that what we are supposed to do, what we are not supposed to do, and yet we get triggered. We say we will do yoga, we will do meditation, we will wake up tomorrow morning with a positive mindset, but somewhere down the line in the day, something happens and we are back to square one. Any thoughts on why do we get triggered? Because we are intelligent creatures and we know how to manage our lives. And yet we cannot manage when these triggers show up in our environment. No thoughts? You're all thinking? It's okay. This always lies. Yes, Sajin, it does lie in our subconscious mind. I'm coming to that, the most interesting part, and input touches emotion. Correct. So we are in today's session because we are talking about holistic sciences. We are just not going to focus on us at a physical level. Of course, we exist in our physical bodies, but we are much more than that. Yes, an event can trigger it. Of course, events are triggering it all the time. Events, people around us, news, anything can trigger it. So when we talk of a holistic approach, the word holistic comes from the Greek word, and when you translate that word, it says to be whole, which means we are just not existing in our physical bodies. Of course, physical body is a part of our existence, but we looked at our entire living standing on 3 legs. One is our physical body, the second is our mind, and the third is our energy. So it's mind, body, energy is what we say completes us as human beings. Out of these 3, the physical body is very easy to understand and relate to, because guess what? It's tangible. If there's a pain in my body, I can respond to it. But the other 2 elements that make me whole and complete are intangibles. So energy is whatever you can call it. You can call it chi, you can call it prana, you can call it the life force, you can call it our soul, whichever way we want to describe it. But it is something that I have in me that keeps me alive, which my laptop here doesn't have. And similarly, there is mind. Mind is, and we are going to deal more into details into the theory of the mind and the development of the mind today. But from a very distant perspective, we are going to look at these 3 elements interacting with each other and making our lives what we are today. So what we are talking about, emotional resilience, is just not what we feel, the anxiety or the fear in our bodies. It is at the level of the mind, it is at the level of the energy, and then it is at the level of our physical body. So we will begin with understanding a total holistic and integrated approach of our own lives and our own existence. In holistic sciences, we say that it is just, again, if you look deeper, just not the mind, body, and the energy. A very simple way of looking at it is we actually exist at 4 different levels. So imagine we have 4 bodies, physical body being just one out of that 4. So the first body, and of course the 3 bodies are intangible, and there's only one body, the physical body, which is tangible. So the first body is called the body of thoughts. And if I go technical, we call this the causal body. Now, each of us think anywhere between 60 to 80,000 thoughts in a day, 80% of which is repetitive. So right now, if I tell you, wherever you are seated, you know what clothes you're wearing today, which room you are in. So now for 5 seconds, close your eyes. Imagine yourself in the same set of clothes that you're wearing. And now imagine, instead of being in the room that you are right now, imagine you're standing on top of Mount Everest. 5 seconds, not more than that. So just close your eyes and imagine. So I am wearing a combination of black and red, and with whatever I'm wearing, I'm now going to picture myself in my head standing on Mount Everest. And then come back to the here and now. It is silly, it is funny, but it gives us an insight into the body of our thoughts. So physically, we did not go anywhere. We are sitting exactly where we were. But it is so easy just to imagine wearing the same set of clothes standing on Mount Everest, because guess what? I know what I'm wearing and I know how Mount Everest will look like. Snow, frost, all around. So where you traveled in that 5 seconds in your thoughts, now you may have had an image or you may not, but you can at least think of Mount Everest. That is the existence of your thought body. Every thought that we think creates and generates an emotion. So thoughts in itself are not negative or positive. So the thought I'm standing on top of Mount Everest is a very neutral statement. Now, how I feel about it is completely different. For some people, it will be so pleasant that, oh my God, I'm not in Dubai in this heat. I'm in middle of snow and this cold breeze is blowing on my face. Or for someone like me who doesn't like cold, for me, it'd be, oh my goodness, this is so cold. Not good. So thought is a very neutral form of energy. When this energy starts to move, so emotions that we are talking about today is, if you break the word, it is energy in motion. And the body of emotions is the second body we are talking about, and that is our focus today. We are talking about emotions. Is called the astral body. Another very simple way of understanding astral body is, you'll hear of cases where there's a new mother who's given birth. She completes her maternity break. She goes back to work. And when the baby cries at home for milk, mother lactates at the workplace. How does this happen? So we talk of telepathy. We say that, we are even connected to people. Or you can hear of cases when, I was just thinking of a friend, and that evening my friend called up. And we laugh it out saying, oh, it's telepathy, this is how it works. So it is right. This is exactly how it works. We are connected to the people we love and care for through our astral body, a body of emotions. So for the mother and child, it's a beautiful bond and probably the strongest bond we have on earth. So that the mother is not thinking of the child, the mother is working, but the body reacts to the emotional bond. When we feel emotions in the body, what then happens, the next stage is it affects our energy levels. So for example, I'm sitting with you today, and suddenly I get distracted and I'm thinking of my cute little puppy who's sitting right outside the door because he wants to be inside and he can't be. And the moment I think of Fluffy, I have an image of Fluffy in my head. And the moment I have that image, it generates a happy emotion for me. So I smile. It uplifts my energy. Similarly, suddenly I remember I had to send an email and I've missed a deadline. My energy levels go down. Third body is the body of energy. Now we are slowly coming closer to our physical existence. So a very different way of looking at energy body is through the science of what we call energy science, which is science of auras and chakras. Now, before I get into the details, because this is so fascinating, I can talk for hours on it. Do you know what is aura and what is chakras? Any of you have ventured or heard this words before? Yes, Simran. You have heard. So, good. It's actually, Reiki teaches it. Yes, any of the energy sciences, energy modalities will talk of the aura. So, it's actually very simple to understand this. So aura is nothing. It is a scientifically proven thing. The electromagnetic field that is around us. So because we are living creatures, we are energy. There is an electromagnetic field which is around me and you, but not again around my chair and my table and my computer. Nowadays, aura can also be photographed. So there are a lot of holistic centers that do aura photography, and they can talk to you about it more in details. Yoga to energizes. Yes, yoga also works on all the energy meridians. It works on the aura and it opens our chakras. So that is the aura, which is the energy field around us. Chakras are points in our bodies, and there are more than 120 chakras in the body. But even if you look at the 7 major chakras in our body, it is very, very interesting to note that the position of these chakras are aligned to one of the functioning systems. So chakras are these vortices of energy through which our life force flows. So in an ideal state, our thoughts should create emotions which are balanced, and then our energy levels should be good. However, for some reason, if our thoughts create an emotional overwhelm, then it affects us at the level of energy or at the level of our electromagnetic field or these chakras. Now, if you look at the position of these 7 major chakras and you look at the position of our endocrine system inside our body, they are one above the other. So for example, the crown chakra is related to the pituitary gland. The third eye has connection with the pineal gland. The throat chakra is connected to the thyroid, the heart, to the thymus, and so on and so forth. So thoughts or triggers that create emotional imbalance end up in disbalancing our energy, which makes us feel bad. We feel sad or anxious or fearful. The same way, if you look at it medically, if you go to our doctor, we get our bloods tested, they will say that your endocrine system is not functioning properly, and what you have is a hormonal imbalance. Metabolism goes for a toss, and body starts to produce more toxins rather than digesting the food in the right way and producing the right amount of hormones. And then we find the impact in our physical bodies, which is including our brain and our body functions. What we feel in the body is we call a disease. If you break that word, it is dis-ease. So our natural state should be of thoughts generating emotions that are balanced, that keeps our energies balanced, that helps our life force to flow. Our chakras are not blocked. Our endocrine system is functioning to the utmost T, and our physical bodies, we feel good in our physical bodies. The reverse is thoughts creating negative emotions, which affect our energies badly, which means our chakras get blocked, our endocrine system goes for a toss, and we generate in our bodies what we call disease. And when our body feels not so good, we go back to 1001 more thoughts. This is the cycle. This is how we look at any person holistically. We look at them at the level of thoughts, emotions, energy, and physical body. I'm just going to have a look at the chat. Negative and positive aura. Aura is just aura. You know, it's energy. It's not negative or positive, but yes, negative thoughts or negative emotions can make your aura shrink. Like even with diseases, our auras kind of shrink. Yes, Anand, correct. Emotional, mental, and spiritual level from an energy field around the body is called. It is just as we say, we first get it in the aura, and then things come into our body. So is that one of the reasons stress is affecting our bodies? Yes, exactly. It's a holistic way of saying stress is affecting, because guess what? When it affects our chakra of the solar plexus, we are talking of adrenaline. We are talking of stress hormones being produced in our bodies, and that's when you feel that uneasiness and restlessness. Can aura be ruptured or healed? Aura cannot be ruptured. Aura is like, you know, if your body is like a sponge and the water around you is like the aura. So it can be penetrated. Yes, there can be external elements that can come into your aura, and there's a whole line of work of aura cleansing and chakra balancing. And yes, it can be healed. Definitely, all the time. That's what I do for a living. Apart from hypnotherapy, there's this whole energy side to it. It can be. You can build your aura, you can protect your aura. And if we have time, we will do a short exercise in the end, how you can protect your aura, because now we are looking at this from the completely holistic purpose, just not our physical bodies. So that brings us to understanding the power of the thought and the mind. So if it is our thoughts that determine how we feel, because thoughts will generate emotions, emotions will affect energy, and energy will affect our bodies, then we know that how we habitually think will determine how we habitually feel. And if we want to change the way we feel, which means we don't want to be not resilient, we want to have our emotional resilience with us, we have to go to the level of thoughts and start to work from there. So if our thoughts are so vital in shaping our experience, please tell me, what do you think? Where do our thoughts come from? Do they like fall from the sky in the morning and we catch them? Or do we generate our thoughts? Where does thoughts come from? Triggers, yes, correct. Triggers generate the thoughts. Yes, Hasna, Hansa, very good. It is beliefs. It is sometimes even our subconscious beliefs that trigger that thought. Situations, dreams. Dreams are a way of the, I'm coming to that, to the subconscious part. Dreams can trigger, but dreams is the way the subconscious mind talks to us. So all of this, again, you see from the responses, something it is external and sometimes it is internal to us. But what we are looking at is, we are saying, let's look at it. It comes from our mind. All these triggers that we till now believe is external to us, like the COVID or any other situation, but in fact, they are just external triggers. What is happening inside me is happening inside my mind. And that brings me to my favorite part of our webinar today, because this is what I learned very early on in clinical hypnotherapy, and it completely changed my life, my career, and affected me in a positive way in many, many ways. So coming to the science of the mind, before we get into the details, please share once again, what do you think is mind? And where is your mind? Do we believe we all have a mind? We do, right? Because we talk about it, saying that, oh, I've lost my mind, or so. What is mind? And where is your mind? Mind is brain. You know, this is exactly my answer many years back when I was sitting in my clinical hypnotherapy class, because I was so convinced that mind and brain is same, because of course we even point and say, you know, what we think. But my friend, mind is not brain, because brain is brain and mind is mind, and they're two different words. Thoughts make the mind. It's a sum total of experience and creates a perception of the world around us. Yes, very, very close. Thank you for that definition. So to begin with, mind is not brain. And because I did not believe that, I went and looked up, and this is my Oxford Dictionary definition of mind when I had started to study mind science. And even Oxford Dictionary says that it's an element of a person that enables them to be aware of the world and their experiences, to think, to feel, the faculty of consciousness and thought. Complicated, but it's very simple to understand that mind is something that is now an element of a person, which means it is intangible. It is not tangible. We cannot touch or feel, touch mind. We can feel it, we can experience it. Now that's the Oxford Dictionary definition. In mind science and in holistic sciences, we define mind as a vibrating ball of energy located all around us, the center of which is at the pit of your stomach. Yes, it is a very weird definition of mind, but I'd like you to focus on the end part, which says the epicenter, the center of this ball, which is all around me, intangible, but I'm soaked in it, is at the center, is at the pit of my stomach. Now think in terms of physiology, anatomy, and tell me, what is the organ that is at the pit of our stomach? And that will answer you why we have such a weird definition. Is it our stomach? Is it our liver? What is there at the center, at the pit of our stomach? Go behind stomach, try. Yes, Sajin, yes, it is the small intestines. And there is another word for small intestine, and we call it the gut. Yes. And that's where the term comes, gut feeling. So your and my gut feels nothing. It is part of the gastrointestinal tract which digests the food we eat. Yet all of us have used this before. We say that I have a gut feeling about this person, or I have a gut feeling about the situation. What brings us to is that the mind is that center, that seat of intelligence. You can call it intellect, you can call it intuition, whatever it is. It is some sense of intelligence that is around us that helps us navigate through life, experience life. The difference between the brain and the mind is exactly the difference between Zoom and my laptop. So I'm using my laptop to reach out to you. My laptop is a tangible object. It's the hardware. Without my laptop, there is no way I can connect to you. But just having a laptop and having my presentation is not sufficient. I am using a software. So the software of Zoom is working on my laptop, and then I'm able to connect to you. So the mind is the software that acts on the hardware of our bodies, and they function together. That is how we live our lives. The important thing here is mind is a very powerful tool. And the million-dollar question is, are you in charge of your mind, or your mind is in charge of you? And when you answer that question for yourself, you will notice the kind of experiences you're attracting, the way you are looking at life. So it is just a tool. It is nothing more than that. It's a software that we humans have been gifted. Should we know how to use it, life is very, very different. And that brings me to what I was saying a little while back, that I strongly believe the science of the mind should be taught in school, like how we read English and geography and math, because it's a life skill. Mind science is a life skill, like swimming, knowing how to swim, knowing how to bike, knowing how to drive. Similarly, knowing the mind for me is as important as any of these activities. Mind never mind. Yes. Yes, I should be. Krish, you're right. I should be in charge of my mind. But the thing is, when you are in charge of your mind, you will not lose your emotional resilience. Anytime we are talking about emotional resilience and we are losing it, it means the mind is taking over, which means mind is now either pushing you into the past, and those are your 3 triggers, or mind is worried about the future and you have the trigger of fear in you. Mind is in charge mostly. It depends, once this awareness kicks in slowly, you can also take charge of your mind. Not always, but even when we slip and we know that my mind has taken over, and then we go into which part of the mind has taken over, it is then workable. We can't control our thoughts, Kiran. What happens is we will still get those thoughts, but our response to the thoughts will become very different. So controlling thoughts, dodgy, but having the thoughts and choosing to react in a particular way is in my hands. And that's what we are going to look at today. Yes, we need to detach from the thoughts, not in a dispassionate way, but in a way where I can observe my thoughts. That's where the science of mindfulness also comes in, that I am an observer. That's where the science of meditation comes in, that I will detach, I will dissociate, and I will look at the thought very neutrally. Okay, so coming to a little more details of the mind. If this is the ball of energy all around me with which I'm experiencing life, now mind, definitely we all know mind has 2 parts. There's a part of the mind which is conscious, which you, me, all of us are using at the moment. And there's a part of my mind that is subconscious, unconscious, as we say. Now, the conscious part of our minds only is 10 to 12%. which means there is a subconscious part which is huge, which is 80 to 90%. Now look at this as an iceberg. You know, we are only able to see the top part of it. We are only able to see the tip of the iceberg, but the huge part, the voluminous part of the iceberg is actually underwater. It is exactly the same with our minds. We are only able to work through the conscious part, which is very small. It's like 10%, whereas the 90% of it is mostly we are unconscious of it. Now, with this thought, tell me, what do you think are the functions of the conscious mind? What do we do with the conscious mind, and what do we do? What does the subconscious mind do for us? Because if there are two parts, I'm pretty sure they have two very different functions we are talking of. Any guesses? Conscious mind acts. Yes, subconscious also acts. It's just that we are not aware of it. But I know what you're saying. Action, yes, action lies in the conscious. Subconscious creates, correct? Conscious also creates. Subconscious mind directs. Logic, yes, logic is in conscious, action and reaction. So yeah, all of you are right. As you see here, the conscious mind, I'm just going to move this up, yeah. So all our thinking, our logic, our analysis, our feelings, our decision making, our judgments, everything is in the conscious. So what I'm saying in very simple words is we live our entire lives just using 10 to 12% of our whole capability. Which brings me to the function of the subconscious mind. And Girija, you are absolutely right. Subconscious mind, though huge, is very simple. Subconscious mind only does two things. It first and foremost stores, as Girija says. What does it store? It stores everything, all experiences of your life. So the conscious mind is like the CPU of your computer. Central processing unit, constantly updating, working in a state of flux. Subconscious mind is like the hard drive of your computer, where we are just filing. We are just filing. Imagine it's a room full of archives where every moment of your life that you've lived from your mother's womb, not even your birth, from your mother's womb till now is filed. It's a storehouse. It's a repertoire of, it's a repository of all our experiences. And the second and the only other function it does is it keeps us alive. That is brain. So, Sharif, what you're saying is you're right what you're saying, but you're looking at it from the aspect of the hardware. So that's the brain. We are not talking of the hardware. We are not talking of what brand of laptop I have. We are here talking about the software. So whether I'm going to use Cisco WebEx or whether I'm using Zoom is what we're talking about. So it has a correlation, yes, but what we're talking is the software. Now, survival, for example, if I ask you, please raise your right hand and wave at me, we all can do it. I know this is right hand, I can wave. But at the same time, if I tell you, please, just so easily you could raise your hand and wave at me. So similarly, with that ease, please control the rate at which your liver is functioning at the moment. Can any of us do that? We can't, because we have no control. Consciously, we have no control of our internal body functions. So survival or internal organ function is controlled by the subconscious mind. Hence, many a times you'll hear the stories when somebody has slipped into coma, and after 2-3 weeks or a month, this person wakes up from coma and the person is able to relate and talk and give details of everything what the doctors are saying or what the family was deciding. Now, how does this happen? Conscious mind is not there, person is in coma. But the filing in the archive is still happening because the subconscious is still alive. Internal organ functions are still happening. So these are the files that we are saving. And I will come back to this when we talk of triggers again. But coming to triggers, if the strength of the conscious mind is 1 times x, the strength of the subconscious mind is 6,000 times x. Which means this brings us to the point of triggers. If there is a conscious trigger and I'm consciously working on it, that is different. But if my trigger of guilt, of anger, of helplessness and fear comes from my subconscious space, it becomes overwhelming. That is when overthinking happens. That is when anxiety kicks in. That is when panic attacks happen. Because it's coming from a space which is way more stronger than our conscious desires. Now, subconscious also has 2 parts. One is what we call as the modern memory, which is your and my memory from the time I have gained consciousness in my mother's womb. People say around 3 months or 4 months onwards. So imagine every moment of your life is filed there. But there's also something called the primitive memory, which is not my experiences. This is evolutionary memory, genetics, DNA, or cellular memory, as we say. So this could come from my ancestors. And when I say ancestors, it could be my parents, it could be my grandparents, and it could be anybody in my family tree, from where I now have an imprint into my body. It's at a body level, it's cellular memory, and at the level of the mind. So many a times we say that I feel anxious. Oh, but I remember my mom also used to be anxious. This becomes a little difficult for us to take in, but it's very easy for us to say that, you know, I have a higher chance of diabetes because my mom is diabetic. Because we are used to dealing it and understanding it from the body perspective. But many a time our triggers are just not our triggers. Our triggers sometimes also come to us genetically through the ancestral line, and there are many beautiful line of work that only focuses on ancestral healing and what we call as working on the evolutionary memory. And before we move on, the last part, before we move on, the second last part is, why are we focusing today on subconscious? Is because this triggers this emotional resilience topic that we are talking of. How do we know we have lost the resilience? We know it when we are either in a fight mode or a flight mode, which means there's a trigger that either makes me so agitated that I am confronting it, or it makes me so nervous that I want to run away from it. So from looking at it from the hardware brain perspective, because I think someone just mentioned that, this is the reptilian brain impact or a response. So we know we are losing emotional resilience if you find yourself in the fight or flight mode. And this comes from a very deep subconscious level. Because consciously we have our conditioning and we are supposed to behave in a certain way. But subconsciously, this is where it comes from. And once the episode is over, we sometimes wonder, why did I behave in that way? Now you know why you behave in that way, because it comes from a space which is 6,000 times stronger than all our conscious efforts to camouflage it. And that brings us to the last part of understanding the conscious. I'll come back to the questions in the chat. I will just finish this the third part of the mind, which we call as the critical mind. So the critical mind, you can look at it as a filter. So as we start to grow up, our conscious mind only kicks in once we are born. Subconscious is always there. Subconsciously, we have taken an imprint even when we have been in our mother's womb. But like every other place, we'll have a space crunch. So our subconscious mind also can't keep filing everything that comes our way. So what it creates is just a filter, like how we filter tea before we drink. Similarly, we create a layer in our mind, what we call as the critical mind. In very simple terms, it is our belief systems. Someone mentioned that triggers come from belief system. Yes, they do. How is this belief system created? This layer is created in the first 8 years of our life. So all of us here who have young children, I know, my ears went like this because I wanted to know more about what happens. So remember, mind is a software, and this mind gets programmed. The software gets programmed in the first 8 years of our lives. It freezes at age 8, and thereafter we are only running that same program till the time we are alive. It may sound depressive. It doesn't mean that all cause is lost and we are absolutely lost causes. No, there are many ways to rewire the critical filter, the belief systems, the subconscious mind. I won't get into the details for today, but yeah, there are ways to do it. How is this belief system formed? It is formed by 4 factors. Socio, which is the society in which a child is brought up, the parents, the family, extended family. Economic situation around which the child grows up, the education the child receives, and the religious beliefs of the family. In simple words, our condition. Once this is set in, we are now prepared at age 8 to look at the world through whatever colored glasses we have now accumulated in the first 8 years. Triggers, coming back to today's topic, the triggers for not being emotionally resilient, the ones that come very consciously, we are able to deal with it. The ones which, the 4 that we spoke about, mostly is, as I said, COVID is only heightened it. It's only bringing to surface what lies beneath. And what lies beneath is either our experiences that we have stored in our subconscious mind or our belief systems that could be partly conscious, but mostly which are unconscious. So our response to COVID, our response to crisis is just coming from this zone. Whatever doesn't come from this zone, we can very easily handle it. So conscious zone is easily dealt with. It's only the unconscious or the subconscious zone which completely throws us off gear. Let me quickly look at the chat. Okay. Okay. Cognitive dissonance. So we are not looking at cognitive dissonance today, Kiran, but I can obviously come back to it later. Cognitive dissonance happens we are more going towards the conscious mind. We are not looking at cognitive processes. We are looking at what is subcognitive, because the triggers that we are talking about today is more from the subconscious space. So with this background now and understanding your triggers from a very cognitive perspective, from a very subconscious perspective, then what is the solution to it? How do we reprogram it? Because that's the whole purpose of the session today, to find a way to reconfigure it. So how we do this is, we were just talking about this in the beginning, I think, that we detach. Now, detaching just cognitively is not good enough. So how we do this is, we will first look at our experiences as an experience. So in life, the idea is not to erase an experience you've had. So we don't go into the subconscious to erase a file. We actually go to neutralize it. What exactly do we neutralize? So that those files that you saw, they actually have 2 parts to it. There is a fact and there is an emotional charge. So the fact remains as it is. What we actually work on in holistic sciences is to neutralize that excess charge that got stuck to, which means we will now dissociate that this is something that has happened to me. I am not that. So I am not equal to my experience. And once I'm able to detach that, then I'm in a position to release that toxicity, to release that impact, that domino effect of overthinking, of that overwhelm of that toxic emotion. So we reprogram our thoughts and our beliefs by healing out all those subconscious patterns that are in conflict with our conscious desires. Not everything there in that space is bad. We don't have to reconfigure the entire software. But if there are bugs, we just need to fix it. And these are the 4 bugs we spoke about earlier. How do we do it? From a very cognitive perspective, we cannot go back and change anything from the past. Neither we have a time machine to go into the future. So this is the flip that we do. So if you have identified in the exercise that we did in the beginning that your overwhelming trigger is guilt, then we flip that into learning. So whatever I have done wrong in the past, what can I do about it? I can lament it and I can create more remorse, or I can look at it objectively with that distance and see what I can learn from this experience. So guilt into learning Anger, if I'm angry at someone or a situation that has happened in the past, the flip side of that is acceptance. Now, this is a tricky word and I want to clarify. Acceptance doesn't mean that you have to accept bad behavior or anything bad that has happened. By acceptance, I mean here, whatever the situation is, just accept to yourself that it's happened in the past and it's over. It does not define me, because the more we try to push it away, the more it comes back. So acceptance is acknowledgement of knowing that this has happened. Helplessness into motivation. And finally, fear into faith. And I find this very beautiful because as children, as babies, we are born with ultimate faith. You know, when a child is born, when a baby is born, the baby has the innate faith that it will be taken care of, and it relies completely on the caregivers for it. Full faith. If you ask a baby to jump like we have in the picture, baby will jump because baby believes you're going to take care of it. We as adults in the journey of life, what sometimes happens is we lose the faith. So if fear is a reaction that is bothering you given this pandemic situation, then reflect back and look at where have you lost your faith. Now this faith could be your faith in your own self, or it could be faith in someone else, it could be faith in God, doesn't matter. So coming back to our exercise, take a few moments, or you can just make a note of it and you can do it later. Please try and see if you can link this guilt to learning, this anger to acceptance, the flip of all these triggers into something that is more meaningful. I will now look at again the chats and see if there's anything I need to answer. Okay. Subconscious mind, how to make use of it. Okay, how to use it is being aware of your patterns. So it is there. It's subconscious mind is neither good or bad. So the way you will use it is understanding what your pattern is, and this is one exercise that can help you with that. So becoming more aware. So see, what comes to our awareness can never bother us. So the more we shift, if there is a pattern that is making me feel not good about anything, the more we shift that pattern to our consciousness. So imagine there is a corrupted file in your hard drive. So every time I plug in my hard drive into my computer goes boom. So my job is now to enter the hard drive, take out the corrupted file and put it on my desktop. This is how you make use of the subconscious mind. You take out something that is unconscious, you understand it, you rewire it, and you flip it. So if guilt is the program that is running, I need to face my guilt, and I'll face it by pasting it on my desktop and then working on it. I'm not going to delete the file, hence I'm not going to delete the experience, but I'm going to work on it. Detach means observe. Not blame, not feel bad about it, neutral stance, look at it and try to rewire it. Law of attraction, yes, Kiran, all the time. This is exactly how law of attraction works, because coming from the belief system. So if I have a belief system that I'm not good for, I'm a good for nothing, or I am not good enough, or I do not deserve love, this is totally law of attraction. So I will keep attracting those people in my life, those situations in my life that will make me feel more of it. And the reverse is, if I believe that I'm worthy and I can change things in my life, it changes. So what happens internally, the world outside is just a reflection of what we are inside. And yes, law of attraction completely works on this note. Okay, let me quickly run through the... We had faith in science to solve problems. Pandemic has shaken that faith, hence the fear. Yes, I would say we still have faith, and I do believe that we need science. Like for example, though I work in the field of holistic sciences, but I'm a fan of doctors and I respect them, especially after I delivered my twins. I know what, the goodness they bring. So this is not against science, this is not against medicine, but The pandemic, definitely, I agree with you, Pushpendra, that it's actually more than shaking our faith. It has brought back to us that we need to have faith. There are so many things in the world that are beyond our control. So flip it. Try to not look at it that it has shaken faith. It's actually showing us that if we have faith, the journey just becomes much easier. What is happening in the world is happening, and science, I'm pretty sure, will come up with medicine or vaccines or whichever way we go, and we will find a way to navigate through it. So my suggestion would be flip that. Focus more on faith, and the fear that you're talking about will start to calm down. I believe there's a strong connection between mind and body. Totally. Mind is described as the intangible body, and body is the tangible part of the mind. Coming back to what I said earlier, our existence has three parts. It's got mind, body, and energy. It's like my car. My car is parked outside my house. Now, if I want to go from my home to my workplace, I need the car. The body is like the engine of the car. If something goes wrong with my body, I go to a doctor. If something goes wrong with the engine of my car, I take it to the garage. But just the car's body and engine is not enough for me to go from home to work. What I need is petrol, the fuel. The fuel is like the energy. I cannot see where my fuel tank is from the outside, but I know there is fuel that is circulating, and hence the car moves. Now, with a full tank of petrol and a very good car standing outside my house doesn't allow me to again reach my destination. What I still need is the driver. So I have to sit at the steering wheel to drive myself to work. The driver is the mind. So it is absolutely enmeshed. Our existence is an enmeshed version of our mind, body, and I would add even the energy that we are talking about. Totally agree with you. If you're interested, there are many books, which talks about the mind-body connection. I'm reading a book by Louis Hay. It says Heal Your Body. How it shows more in depth, not the topic today, but because we have a question on it. Sudhir, maybe you will find it interesting to read it, because it shows the metaphysics of diseases, of how our thoughts, the model that we discussed earlier, how our thoughts can impact emotions, energy levels, and finally the diseases. It's a wonderful read, and it shows and proves huge connection between thoughts, between mind and body. You can also look up Dr. Bruce Lipton. There are beautiful videos even on YouTube. You can just search. He talks about this as well, the mind-body connection. Very difficult to detach. Yes, it is difficult to detach, because of the way we are brought up, our conditioning and what we do. But with practice, it is not as difficult. As I say, I am a living example of it. I have been on the hamster wheel. I know how it feels to be constantly in the grind. But mind science is something that doesn't need a qualification. Each one of us can practice it. And this detachment we are talking about is not detaching from your family and going up in the mountains. This detachment is that healthy space between my triggers and my response to it. So with a little bit practice, I think it's doable for all of us. Vajita says dolphins use more than 80% of its. Is it? I don't know. I have not heard, but it's very interesting. I will read up on it. Thank you for highlighting this. Their IQ level, yes. So IQ, EQ, this is what we are talking about. That when I would believe even dolphins have very high EQ because they emotionally connect. That's the reason the relationship between dolphins and humans is so beautiful, because they can emote, they can communicate. So I'm pretty sure I will definitely look into this. Thank you for sharing this. Anger acceptance, any examples? Yes. So for example, you can look at anything that has made you angry in the past. What example can I take for myself? Okay. So if I am late somewhere, I get very angry with myself because I want to be on time. That's a protocol that I want to follow. Now, for example, I am on Sheikh Zayed Road and I have to reach my children's school to pick them up. and there's an accident. Now, this is somebody else's fault probably, or maybe nobody's fault, who knows, but I find my anger rising through my body. Irrespective of all the holistic sciences and all my practices, I can feel my anger now, rising through my system. So anger generally comes when it's a situation out of control, when somebody else is to be blamed. Acceptance is first acknowledging that anger. So not pushing it away, not saying that, okay, I need to be Zen. I cannot be Zen. I am getting agitated because my children are waiting and I need to go. So the first step of acceptance is acknowledgement. And then accepting that it is outside my control. That is where the anger will drop. So I'm not again judging somebody else's part of making this accident and we are stuck. Anger to acceptance is acknowledgement and taking it at face value what it is. It is a fact that Sheikh Zayed Road is chock-a-block because there's an accident and there is nothing I can do about it. When this goes down, then when the acceptance starts to kick in of the situation, I'm not again saying right or wrong, but just accepting the situation, then I have the space to say, okay, there is no point to be angry. I'm going to call up the school and say, I'm going to be 10 minutes late. That is anger to acceptance. It's acknowledgement and taking it at face value, whatever it is. I may not agree to the actions of the driver who caused the accident, but I'm going to accept this is the reality. This is my reality for probably the next half an hour. Okay, thank you very much. Just to share, there was a Hollywood maybe made on mind. Was it Nancy or was it Lucy? I remember Lucy. I don't remember Nancy, but I think that's the one you're talking about. And there are, talking of movies, there are so many movies I can talk of. I'm a complete movie buff. So for ones who are interested in mind science or hypnotherapy, and if you have watched, Inception is a beautiful movie which talks about, a dream in a dream in a dream, which is the layers of subconscious. So yes, there are many movies that give you sometimes the right flavor and sometimes not so right flavor of mind sciences. Yes, Lucy. No problem. It's okay, Raman. Thank you for sharing that. Thanks so much. So I think I have covered most of the questions. Please tell me if I have missed anything, then I will go back there. I'm just looking at the chat. Looks like, thank you so much. Thank you. You like it so much to digest. It is, but it's very, very easy. What I'm going to do is I will leave my contact details. What did I do? I just need to share it. Give me a moment. And because it's, mind science is not what we discuss so frequently. If there is anything that remains undigested, or if there is anything that you want to come up later and check with me, you are most welcome. You can find me, you can connect to me on LinkedIn, you can connect to me via email or via phone. I work as a mind science specialist in hypnotherapy in Illuminations DLT. So you can also Google Illuminations and find me there. Okay, there's more on chat. Thank you all. Thank you, Rishi. I am glad you found it insightful. Sleep over it. If there is any other things that come up, any other questions that you have, I will be more than happy to guide you through it.
Thank you so much, Arpita. It was a really nice and wonderful session. And looking at the queries that people had and the suggestions, it had, like what Krish said, it has been so much to absorb. We know it, but sometimes, like for me, cognitive dissonance, for me, it was like, okay, it is subconscious, conscious. Somewhere there's a thin line, but yeah, you put it well, Maybe we should have a separate session on that from you then.
Yes, sure. See, what I tried to do is it's a 1 hour webinar. So I just wanted to keep it simplistic as much as possible. But also, it's my passion. So I want to share the science of the mind. And it can be a little too overwhelming if I get into more details. I can go on, like I teach this course, it's a 2-day course. So wow. 2 full days. So I don't want to bombard. But yes, if there's anything that you have liked, we can always do another session later. More than
We
happy.
can. And I'm sure you'll be good in quantum physics then.
See, as I say, this is second phase of my life, so I'm relearning everything now. So yeah, I can't say I was a fan of physics, but now, yeah, quantum physics and what we call as metaphysics. The thin line that you're talking about is between what is physical and what is metaphysical.
Exactly.
And this line is constantly shifting.
But thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm very glad you liked it.
You had an amazing, I'm sure Samir will agree that we have had an amazing turnout for this session also. Thanks to you, people didn't want to go and they're still glued on. So you've done some magic out here.
It's okay. I have time. I will be here. Like, if there are any questions to answer.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kiran. Thank you so much.
Just regarding that mind, like mind, you were talking about the mind. Mind, normally what happens when somebody, like kids and all, what we say, mind your language or mind or never mind. Okay. So, I mean, to know about the mind itself is something so interesting and intriguing, actually,
It is, this is where I say, we don't, as a society, and it's all around the world, we don't give so much importance of knowing these basics. I imagine, like, if I had this knowledge when I was 15 years old, how my life choices would be very, very different. So yes, we use it so frequently. Have you lost your mind? And where is your mind? Your mind is not at work today. But what we are talking of actually is a very subconscious space, which we don't know or we don't talk about much.
True. Actually, the last slide is which is very, very interesting for me. Like, what happens, it's very relevant in the sense, like in a workplace, especially the flip, like anger, many a times we get into anger or fear whenever, many a time when opportunities are given, also people get into fear. It's not only during pandemic or something that fear evolves, but sometimes, people are scared to take responsibilities. They don't want to they want to shy away from responsibilities. They don't want to take responsibilities. They don't want to make use of the opportunities. So is it fear, or I mean, how to transform them from that fear state to faith, that they can do it?
Yes, it happens a lot. In fact, it's very interesting. I worked with a client very recently. So exactly your example. So this lady, she's very good at her work, and she got promoted in middle of all this COVID crisis. And guess what she did? She resigned because she's like, I just cannot take this. I am not worthy. So now we are looking at belief systems or experiences. Now we don't know where we will land. So when I worked with this lady, it was not her own experience because she's quite successful in what she does and she's good at her job. But what we found was it came ancestrally. So there was her session was completely on ancestral healing, which sits as a belief system. Her belief system is, how can I accept a promotion when around the world people are suffering? So it's guilt. It's completely driven by a subconscious guilt for the collective consciousness, just not for her. So each person will be different. It's not the same. But yes, definitely this is not uncommon that it could be fear, or it could be just the sense of, I'm not worthy enough. This is what we call as in psychology as imposter syndrome. Like, I pretend to be this person at work, but inside me, I am not this person. And I'm not even sure I can take up this responsibility. So if I accept the promotion or if I take on these added responsibilities, what's going to happen is I'm going to get exposed. And the entire world will know that I'm not worth it. So it depends. These are all examples. It depends case to case, but it's very, very common. It's not uncommon.
Okay, because I work with a lot of children actually. I could see a lot of kids, when you try to motivate them or tell them that you can do it. Yes. They are very contented. They're very they say, okay, I'm satisfied with this. I don't want to overperform, or I don't want to do that. Yeah. So I don't understand at times whether it is really fear or they're lacking faith in themselves that they can't perform or to put in which, I mean, early childhood development.
Yeah. It's the belief system of, the consequence of failing. So if failure is seen as something bad, then I might as well, eat this much cake and be happy with it. Why should I claim more? Because what will happen when I fail?
But the students actually, they're performing well, but they can do
Yeah.
better than what they are. But then there is a kind of, they don't want to work with certain, certain timelines, or they don't want to change the pattern, or
Yes.
the one which you
Yes.
actually mentioned. So I think
They don't,
yeah.
and you can look at it from a perspective of two things. One is fear of failure. So is there a belief system or an experience which says that, you're not allowed to fail? So you might as well not try it because you're going to fail. Or more widely, but it's not spoken so much, is the fear of success. What happens when I succeed? The bar goes up and the bar keeps going up. So this is all subconscious. None of this is conscious. So subconsciously, I might as well not raise the bar. I might as well be here and I'm very content. So it may not be guilt. It may not be fear. It may just be the fear of either success or failure. It could be either of them. So it's case to case. It's case to case.
So
but you can use
is there
this
a way
model.
out? I mean, is there a way out how to identify this? Are there any techniques and how to improve on those? How to manage these flip techniques and everything?
There are many ways to do this. One is very cognitive. So I'm not getting into the subconscious part today, but yes, you can talk to them and you can just give them this model. Like this is a model I use with my clients a lot, that because especially with people who are confused or don't have an answer to, what is going on, let them resonate. Like with that simple 4 things in one sheet, let them resonate and say what is their theme. And then it's about, if you're counseling them, if they're children, if they're students that you want to bring them up, this is a tool for counseling. You could do that.
Sure, I think I'll get back to you at some point in time. So I think you can help a lot of student community actually.
Definitely. I love working with children, young adults. So yes, anytime, please do. It will be a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Arpita, Nain Tara has a question.
Yes.
Naina, if you want to unmute yourself and ask the question. Naina is one of she heads her department in one very prestigious real estate. And if she has a question, it's serious.
Yes, she's saying, what are your thoughts on hypnotherapy versus CBT? See, both are very, very good techniques to work. Now, when we say CBT, again, we are going into the conscious part. So cognitive behavioral therapy is more your talking, your counseling, and it works. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I personally prefer, it's like the 80-20 principle. I rather work on the subconscious, which is like 90%, rather than only on the conscious. So she's saying, no, I don't head any department. It's okay, even if you don't head any department. Coming back to the point, both work. It depends on who is working and what is the mindset. So for example, with hypnotherapy, what I really face sometimes is the fear. Because hypnotherapy, what you see in movies and what we see on stage is hypnotism. So in hypnotherapy, I don't click my fingers and somebody dances like a monkey. That doesn't happen. But when we watch movies and the world around us, the way hypnotherapy is depicted is very different. So for people with fear of hypnotherapy, for them, cognitive behavioral therapies work. But for me personally, to answer this question, I would say working on the subconscious is way faster, way safer, and way easier to clear our blocks and open ourselves to life rather than just working cognitively. Having said that, I have immense respect for people who do cognitive behavioral therapy. I do it myself sometimes. It's not that I only do hypnotherapy. It will depend person to person. But again, where do I choose to work, on the 10% or on the 90%? I would rather dive into the 90%.
If anybody has questions, or we will have to let Arpita go. She spent more than we had given her, she committed.
That's okay.
So we respect you, Arpita, for this wonderful session.
Thank you so much.
But if all are okay and we can let her go, respecting you.
No, I always block an half an hour extra, when I do my sessions, because there are questions, and what's the point of doing a session when you don't answer the queries that come through? So it's fine. It's been a pleasure.
Hope so. I think everyone has completed their questions. Ishwar sir, are you still having any question? Because you are raising your hand, and Jolas.
Thank you, Samir sir. I think I had a very wonderful session, and I have to thank you especially for giving this opportunity, Samir. It was really.
Yes, I should say thanks to Arpita ma'am. So
Yeah.
I really, it's wonderful. It's like a journey of going to knowing about ourselves. Like knowing about our.
Exactly.
In a
Yeah.
simple word, what we can say, sometimes people we used to say like, these are all things to be happen or not to be happen. No one knows, things which if we go through by one step, then we might realize, yes, these are all things to be happening with us only. So the point is, it's a very wonderful, and I think that people also enjoyed, and the recording will be available by tomorrow morning. Okay, and thank you very much, Arpita ma'am. I really appreciate,
You're
and
most
I will be in
welcome.
touch with you.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Arpita. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye.